Let's testify on that. Oh God, you've done so much for me. I'm grateful and overwhelmed here at your feet. And I could stay here forever, Lord. But you call me to something more. And I hear you say that you have a plan to use every broken woman and man to display just how good you are. We are your living pieces of art. What good does it do to hide away when all of my scars are a picture of grace? All right. So I will testify of the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. For my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, do you believe it? Has he done it for anyone else? I said, has he done it for anyone else? 'Cause the God that I serve, he's always at work. Has he done it for anyone else? So come on and testify of the power of God. Come on and tell the world of the hope we have found. For our body was broken, our hearts were made whole, and that's too good to keep to yourself. Come on and testify of the power of God. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify your voice. This is my. So I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify. Come on, take it out. Jesus, my champion, the victor of grace, the only one worthy of all of my praise. Yeah. So come on and testify. Oh, somebody lift him high. Come on, testify the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. Oh, for my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Sing it. Oh, my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, let's do that right now, Murfreesboro.
And hey, everybody, hope you're doing well. I'm still fighting this stupid ear infection. I'm going to see a specialist tomorrow morning. So hopefully I'll make some progress on it. I still can't hear a thing out of my right ear, which is absolutely driving me nuts. And on top of that, I'm also very nervous about tomorrow because tomorrow morning, I believe a couple hours before I go see the specialist, I'm going in to talk to the people with the state of Tennessee about the whole way that the education program is going to work. So I'll get some more details about that. And I I'm nervous about the interview with the Tennessee State people, and I'm anxious about whatever the specialist in the ENT department has to say as far as my ear. And yeah, and so Leviticus today, we're going to be doing chapter 17. It's a fairly brief chapter, which is probably a good thing because I need to get as much rest as I can tonight. But next week, boy, we are going to hit Leviticus hard on Tuesday next week. I've decided that because I've been having so much trouble hitting that Monday night thing for our live streams, I am going to shift it to Tuesdays and Wednesdays starting next week. But but next week we're probably only going to do one chapter, even though we're going to be covering it for a couple of days, and that's because chapter 18 is I think one of the most used and abused chapters in all of the Bible. It's the chapter on unlawful sexual practices. And so we'll see if the channel even survives YouTube after talking about all that, because we're going to have a fairly frank discussion about all sorts of terrible things and kind of compare that to where we are as a society today. And so, yeah, that's going to be pretty heavy. Hello to everybody that's here, and welcome to anybody that is lurking or tunes in later. I am, of course, Michael J. Crawford, also known as Salty, and this is my wingless bat to preen. Yes. And so I see Bradley is here, Josiah is here. Obviously, saw some of their comments before we even got started. And Josiah tells me to make him a sandwich. Not going to happen. And says, I've seen you lost more subs, and I think they're coming trolling you and unsubbing to you. No, actually, the reason, honestly, the reason that the sub count has been going down steadily for a couple of years now is just because what YouTube does is it periodically just clears out dead accounts. And so, when I maxed out at 14,000 subs or whatever, and then some of those people have just moved on. They don't hang out on YouTube anymore. Some of them created new accounts. Some of them just ignore this particular account. Which is fine. I mean, I'm not holding grudges or anything. I'm just talking about what reality is. And so what YouTube does is they see that if over a period of time a particular sub has zero activity on your channel, they just remove it. And so now, for a while, when they first implemented the system, it was a little crazy because it was removing people that were active on channels and was making people really mad. And all sorts of conspiracy theories from people like the Phantom Menace arose that they were trying to censor them because they thought it was only them, even though it was happening to everyone. But the it's just the algorithm at work, which I'm not a fan of, but it is what it is. I don't like, an algorithm is that's a better term than AI because it's really just an algorithm. AI, and in fact, I like John Lennox in his book 2184. He says that AI is unfortunately named that it should be algorithmic intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence. And then he goes on to talk about how there's really nothing intelligent about AI. It's just a series of algorithms that, and the only ingenious thing about them is how they collect data for their database. But anyway, that's and I'm still waiting to see what happens with that stupid Supreme Court case on the wrongful death suit against Google, which could effectively end Google and everybody else's use of algorithms for video suggestions and stuff. And so I think other actions as well. I think if an algorithm has the authority, for example, to unsub someone from your channel, then if that person turns around and sues Google because they didn't want to unsub and they got unsubbed multiple times, and they want to sue Google for harassment at that point, I think that's a legitimate suit, because if the just because it's the algorithm that does it doesn't mean it's not Google doing it, and that's kind of the core of this wrongful death suit. But we'll see what happens. Robert says shalom tonight. Shalom, shalom, Robert. Josiah says, "Did you give your dog a bath?" No, just put her in a little hoodie there. We did trim her toenails, but no, we did not give her a bath. Generally speaking, you don't have to wash short-haired Chihuahuas very much, because they're, besides the fact that they're just very clean dogs, short-haired dogs require less bathing than long-haired dogs, and should be obvious as to the reasons. All right, so let me switch screens here, and we're going to get right into it. So Leviticus chapter 17, as you may remember, last time we had the joy of going through bodily discharges, and what a fun romp that was. However, now we are done with the bodily discharges. Next week we will do unlawful sexual practices, and this week we have a fairly tame chapter in comparison. Starting at verse 1, the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the Israelites, and say to them, this is what the Lord has commanded. Any Israelite who sacrifices an ox, a lamb, or a goat in the camp or outside of it, instead of bringing it to the entrance to the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to the Lord in front of the tabernacle of the Lord, that person shall be considered guilty of bloodshed." Now, let me stop right there for just a second. This is one thing that a lot of people say, oh, well, cruelty to animals isn't really in the Bible. It absolutely is. Bloodshed is a crime. And granted, it's like not every single thing is listed in Leviticus, for example, that's unlawful. However, there are some things that are just kind of taken for granted as known. Bloodshed is the crime of killing an animal. And so Jews take very seriously the crime of animal cruelty. And so the and so just to so even though what he's saying is, you may have good intentions, you're going to sacrifice a bull, but you're not doing it at the tabernacle. If you're not doing it at the tabernacle, that is bloodshed. So it's the same as just killing, it's the same as just murdering your animal. Now, that's not to say you can't eat beef or lamb or anything like that. It's just that to just kill the animal for non-productive reasons is considered bloodshed. Okay. This is so the Israelites will bring to the Lord the sacrifices they are now making in the open fields. They must bring them to the priest, that is, to the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and sacrifice them as a fellowship offerings. The priest is to splash the blood against the altar of the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting and burn the fat as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. They must no longer offer any of their sacrifices to the goat idols to whom they prostitute themselves. This is to be a lasting ordinance for them and for generations to come. And notice there's several times now in Leviticus where we've had God specifically say this is a lasting ordinance, including, by the way, the practice of animal sacrifice, which for some reason the Jews stopped doing about 2,000 years ago. But it's very important, as far as God is concerned, that you only sacrifice at the tabernacle in the temple. Now, this is also the excuse that modern Jews use, and actually some ancient Jews in their writings post 70 AD, as to why the sacrificial system is no longer in place. Because the temple was destroyed by Rome in 70 AD, as prophesied by Jesus himself. And so with the temple gone, you can't sacrifice at the temple, and therefore, no sacrifice. Now, I would say that from 70 AD to 1945, that may be a fairly legitimate claim because there was no temple, there was no tabernacle during that time period. However, when the Jewish state of Israel was reinstated after World War II, again fulfilling prophecy, the it's very disturbing to me that the Jews didn't immediately build a new temple and resume their sacrificial system. And honestly, it shows me that and I know I mean, the Jews are kind of split on this, but that the nation of Israel no longer takes seriously some of the commands of God, and so if now if you want to acknowledge Jesus as Messiah, and that's the reason that you don't need to sacrifice, I can get behind that. But most Jews will not make that admission, and so it's kind of messed up. And I've talked to some people, and they say, well, as far as why is this? And so, reason number one, the temple where the temple was built, it has is currently occupied by a mosque, and in fact, one of the holiest sites in Islam. And so they can't just tear that down without starting a war with pretty much all of their neighbors. To which I would say this honestly, it is their land. It's in the middle of their country, and they absolutely would have the right to say sorry, but you're going to have to leave. And as far as it causing a war between them and the Muslim states around them, well, the Muslim states around them, they want to wipe Israel off the map already. And so, quite frankly, I don't see how that would change much. And if anything, and I know this sounds terrible, but I'm just being honest about this. It seems almost like the Jews are just showing that they no longer have a level of faith that they once had because don't like David said, if God is with them, who could possibly be against them? I mean, who could stand against Israel if God is with Israel? And so, if they don't have that level of faith in God, well, then they just don't do anything. The other reason that I've heard is that in the original tabernacle, of course, in the you have the place of meeting, and then you have the inner courtyard, and then you have the Holy of Holies. And inside the Holy of Holies is the Ark of the Covenant. And that is where the presence of God Himself sits. So, how can you do the sacrifices when the Ark of the Covenant is lost to history? And I would say this that may be a legitimate point, but the Ark of the Covenant was actually lost prior to the incarnation of Christ, and yet they were still doing sacrifices at the time that Christ was young. And so I don't see that if it was good enough for the Jews of the early first century to do sacrifices without the ark, then it should be good enough for the Jews of the 21st century to do sacrifices without the ark. That's just my 2 cents on all that. I'm sorry to go on a diatribe. Say to them, any Israelite or any foreigner residing among them who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice and does not bring it to the entrance to the tent of meeting to sacrifice it to the Lord must be cut off from the people of Israel. I will set my face against any Israelite or foreigner residing among them who eats blood. I will cut them off from from the people. So this is really, and I know, like there's some laws that people say, well, maybe that was just, like there are hygiene laws and stuff like that. Like, don't eat pork or don't eat, stuff like that. But there are also laws that God makes very clear. This is not a small deal. And eating blood is one of them. Because it's not just that eating blood is unsanitary or anything like that. It, technically isn't. But it's symbolic, as we're going to get to here. For the life of the creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonement for yourselves on the altar. It is the blood that makes atonement for one's life. Therefore, I say to the Israelites, none of you may eat blood, nor may any foreigner residing among you eat blood. So not only is it not okay for any practicing Jew to eat blood, but it's not even okay for anyone who associates with a practicing Jew to eat blood. God takes it that seriously. And notice it is also, just to be clear, not okay for Christians to eat blood, as stated by Peter in the book of Acts. We read about it a couple of weeks ago. But when they were trying to create the bare minimum rules for people that want to convert to Christianity, it was sexual immorality and the eating meat that was sacrificed to idols and partaking in blood. That's it. As far as all the various commandments about food and culture and all that stuff was boiled down to those basic categories. And so, so you can argue around pretty much every law in Leviticus that's not about sexual immorality or the eating of blood or eating from food sacrificed to altars. And a lot of that is because of this chapter right here. And the sexual immorality is in the next chapter. We're going to get into that. But so we need to be very, very careful that we're paying attention. As Christians, we are freed from the constraints of the law overall. But that doesn't mean that the law has no meaning at all. And it doesn't mean that there aren't some laws that are still binding to this day. And that's why Peter wants to spell that out. Any Israelite or any foreigner residing among you who hunts any animal or bird that may be eaten must drain out the blood and cover it with earth. Because the life of every creature is its blood. That is why I've said to the Israelites, you must not eat the blood of any creature, because the life of every creature is its blood. Anyone who eats it must be cut off. So this is kind of interesting because this flies right in the face of the great American tradition of drinking the blood of your first kill if you go hunting. And any of you that live in a hunting community with a lot of hunting families know exactly what I'm talking about. It is a very common tradition that when you make your first kill, you drain the blood from the animal, but when you do, you fill a cup with it and you drink a cup of blood from your first kill. And I'm sorry, that is straight up blasphemous. And so you need to be very careful about these kinds of things. Most people have no idea that it's that it's not okay. Anyone, whether native born or foreigner, who eats anything found dead or torn by wild animals must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be ceremonially unclean until evening. Then they will be clean. But if they do not wash their clothes and bathe themselves, they will be held responsible. So there you go. So I think that it's pretty obvious that God takes us seriously. So this chapter, like I said, it's a very brief chapter, but we can sum it up very simply. You are not under any circumstances to make even an animal sacrifice anywhere other than the temple, the tabernacle specifically. So that means that you cannot just set up an altar in your house and do a proper burnt offering or anything like that for the Lord. And so if that's something you've been thinking about, no, you under that would be absolutely something that God specifically says you do not do. Second, under no circumstances do you eat the blood of animals. Now, in the modern context, and it's not just, it's been going on for hundreds of years, but this is something where the Jews are a culture of law. And I'm not saying that to be insulting, it's just a fact. And the thing about it is that at this point, this is where we get things like kosher food, right? Is from rules like this. Because the Jews are so concerned about eating the blood of animals that they want to make sure that the meat was killed, the blood was drained, and then the blood was buried, right? That's because that's what it says in Leviticus 17. However, let's be clear. It only says you have to bury the blood if you're hunting. Doesn't say anything about agriculture. And so as far as and but the thing is that even big commercial secular meat farms and ranches, they don't just like chop up the meat with the blood still pumping through the animal. That would be horribly inefficient. And that's not how they do it. They do drain the blood of the animal as part of the butchering process. It would be wholly impractical for them to not do that. Now, do they act with reverence and all that with the parts that they cut out? No, they just throw it away or grind it up, make it into fertilizer or whatever they do with it, and then they take the parts that they're going to sell as meat and chop it up into little bits and sell it. But the but that's just business. However, if the law is about eating the blood or eating animals that are sacrificed to idols, I think you can be pretty sure that unless you're going to your local satanic church to buy some meat, it's highly unlikely that you're eating anything sacrificed to idols. But even with that, Paul disagreed with Peter's edict on the sacrifice to idols bit, which we'll get to in the future. But that is Leviticus 17. I hope you enjoyed. So, with that, I will now go to your chat until my wife calls or texts me. Make sure my phone's not muted or anything, because she's supposed to let me know when she's on her way home. Let's see, because then I'm supposed to turn on the oven. Let's see. So, yeah, not worried about that. Right, okay. Yep, there's, looks like, still there. According to our little super secret spyware. All right, so where were we? I've got a jar of nasty in it. Guess what's inside it? No. Clean before you eat. Yeah, well, always a good idea. Stan says double time, not sure why. Chat thing not working. I saw you said that while I was reading, but I'm not sure what you mean. Many believe the so called Temple Mount is really just the remains of the Roman fort that was built there. No, the location of the temple is actually very well known, but the I can't remember the name of the mosque. Let's see. Uh, so it's the Al Aqsa Mosque is uh, is what's there now, and it's a beautiful mosque. But obviously, that would let me switch screens again. This is the location in the middle of Jerusalem. So someone took a little video, I see. So it's absolutely beautiful, but and it is right in the middle of Jerusalem. But obviously, the Jews do not have the gumption to tear down the mosque and build a new temple there. However, I don't know because it's been a long time since I've gone through the entirety of the Old Testament, like I think we're going to end up doing here. And we'll see when we get there. But is there a commandment like when Saul built the temple? Was there a specific commandment saying that this is where the temple must be and only here? Dang. A little bit of that water went down the wrong way. Stupid me. Oh, man. Sorry. Josiah says Zorro versus Captain Hook. Well, Zorro, while a very skilled fighter, is. I think Captain Hook, being a cartoon character, has some certain advantages. Look at the right mind. Okay. Eat the beating heart. Yeah, that would be bad. And Josiah says, I would like to eat heart. Well, you can eat heart as long as there's no blood in it. And in fact, it's funny because the most nutritious parts of the animal are the parts we don't eat. So, but some of it sounds really disgusting, so I don't think I would want to. No full English breakfast. No. Adam Ant versus Underdog. You know, the funny thing is they're both kind of Superman clones. So I'm just going to give it to Underdog based on size. S. Butler 69 says, "What's for dinner? Dinner. Halibut." Trustin says, "Good evening. Good evening, Trustin." Josiah says, "Now the chat's working." Do they allow Catholic churches to be built in like Iran? Of course not. But Iran is a theocracy, a Muslim theocracy. Not sure what your point is on that. And Trustin says, "I've wondered if the temple could be rebuilt in the location, as have I. And what is the excuse that they have not done so?" I have heard the idea that, dang, I hate that, that the Ark of the Covenant not being there is a deciding factor. But we have detailed information on the Ark of the Covenant, so they could rebuild the Ark. It just wouldn't have its original contents. They have Armenian churches in Iran. Well, they actually have. I mean, I don't know if you're talking about the same thing, but they are Orthodox churches in the Middle East. Many of them, however, end up being persecuted by the state, and so they flee many times to America. That's why, for example, we have a lot of Egyptian Orthodox and Iranian Orthodox Christians here in Middle Tennessee. In a foot race, Mighty Mouse versus Speedy Gonzales, the fastest mouse in Mexico. Oh, that one I would have to give to Speedy Gonzales because Speedy Gonzales is like Mexican Flash. He is really fast. Where Mighty Mouse is another Superman clone like Adam Ant or Underdog. But and while Mighty Mouse, I'm sure, does have super speed, it's kind of like Superman versus the Flash in a foot race. Even though they kind of show it being neck and neck in some comics, the truth is the Flash is connected to speed itself, and they just call it the Speed Force. So I think he's Speedy Gonzales is just connected to the Mexican Speed Force. Did you hear about the large boat like structure they found in a mountain in Turkey? No, I have not. And then Mighty Mouse versus Adam Ant. Well, I would say the same thing that I said with the Underdog versus Adam Ant. I think that in this case, when you have Superman clones of different sizes, I'm just going to give it to the larger of the two. And so, since Mighty Mouse is larger than Adam Ant, I would give it to Mighty Mouse. All right. Any actual questions other than one cartoon character versus another? I mean, these aren't even challenging ones, Josiah. Come on. Yes, I know. Spring's looking at me like, why aren't you done yet? Well, because they're not done. Until I'm sure they're done, I'm not going to just end the show. Of course, now they're not saying anything, so maybe I'll end the show soon. Yeah, they're really not saying anything. I guess they've left. I don't know. Do you think I should end the show? What do you think? Do you think I should end the show? Because, like I said, they're not saying anything. Oh, there we go. Just took it a minute. Sylvester versus Tom. Well, that's an interesting one. Sylvester obviously always trying to get Tweety Bird and failing. Tom always trying to get Jerry and always failing. Both of them having been at the wrong end of a broomstick being wielded by a overweight black woman. Both of them have played both a stray cat and a house pet at different times. Both of them have been beaten by various elderly women. I would say that one is as close as a dead heat as I could think of. That's actually a really close one, Robert. I couldn't. I would have to do an in-depth analysis on that one. King David slingshot powerful. I'm not sure what you mean. Sorry, the double time comment was because I was late, missed most of the reading. I can't make intelligent comment. Gotcha. It might be Noah's Ark. Well, Arabic, don't get me wrong. Maybe it is, and if it is, great. However, I don't put my faith in whether or not they find Noah's Ark. And the problem is that every time somebody says, "Oh, look, there's Noah's Ark," and it's not there, and then they say, "Oh no, it's over here. Oh no, it's over here." The more you do that, the more you look like the little boy who cried wolf, and the more the atheists laugh. And so for me, you know what? If all of a sudden, every major archaeologist out there starts agreeing that we found, Noah's Ark, then I'll listen. But as long as it's some news story that you only find on a Christian website, and they have blurry pictures of something that may vaguely be shaped like an ark, take it with a grain of salt. Then he defeated the rest of him with a giant sword. Well, he cut off his head with his sword. Did he defeat them with his sword? I don't remember. I've made videos of Orthodox Christian Mass. Okay. The most powerful artifact. The Ark? Yes, it would be. I think the historical idea is it was bronze. It was bronze, and other soldiers were still using iron. Are you talking about the Ark? Because the Ark was gold. Well, I mean, it was several things. It was gold and wood, and I don't remember. Was there bronze? There might have been some bronze in there too. I don't think there was any remains of Noah's Ark. They would have used it to rebuild civilization. Yeah, it seems like they had that. I mean, there wasn't an availability of a lot of good lumber at that time. And so the first several generations probably cannibalized the Ark in order to build. Will Spaceballs 2 be any good? Don't know. I didn't think Spaceballs 1 was particularly good. So I hope it's better than Spaceballs 1. Maybe the other way around. In the show, one sword can cut through the other one. Oh, I haven't seen the show yet, but you know, and so I don't know. Lone Ranger versus Zorro. That's an easy one. Lone Ranger has a gun. Sorry, I was talking about swords. Sorry, I just think it's historically interesting. It was a news story on NBC last night. Okay. But like I said, well, NBC is also putting out stories that, you know, there's an alien space probe on its way here. So there's that. The giant sword became a big deal in season 2 of that King David show. Gotcha. The last surviving cast member of Hogan's Heroes just died. He was in an episode of TOS, episode as the engineer that got killed by the female computer program. Engineer who got killed by that female computer program. Boy, that's a weird description of something from TOS. I'm trying to remember an engineer who was killed by a female computer program. I'm sorry, Robert. I am for Kirk female. Oh, okay. That was the episode That Which Survives. So I assume you're talking about the guy that was like, Mr. Scott, there's a strange woman here. She knows everything there is to know about that. That guy. Buster Keaton versus Jack Tripper. Oh, Buster Keaton would kill Jack Tripper. Can you remember if Iron Age or Bronze Age was first and which is stronger? Well, I believe Iron Age is first because bronze is more refined than iron. Iron is just a pure element. But as far as which is stronger, it's there are advantages and disadvantages to both. And yeah, that's the Black Engineer. That's the guy I'm thinking of. I don't know if you read any King Arthur lore, but I was wondering for a battle, Merlin versus Dracula, who wins? I don't know a lot about, like, in the lore, what Merlin's real abilities are. I only know from the various movies. And some movies portray him as just kind of being a wise sage, others, basically like Doctor Strange. So I don't know what his real abilities are. As for Dracula, again, if you're going to go with the lore from the books, or are you going to go with what we see in the movies? Because, of course, like the classic Dracula story, Dracula was not subdued by sunlight. He just couldn't use his demonic power during the day. But Dracula was unkillable unless you drove a stake through his heart. So, in a straight up fight, that gives Dracula a huge advantage. By the way, have you seen the new Pluribus show? No, someone mentioned it. Might have been you mentioned it on Sunday. I told the wife about it. We're going to check it out. but I have not watched it yet. I'm wondering if religion becomes a big theme, and it helps to explain why Asian people have different reaction than the Westerner who is probably Christian. Yeah, I don't know. I like I said, I haven't seen it yet. I understand the basic premise is that there's only one person on the entire planet who is not all happy and smiley and everything, and there's an under. I'm sure there's an underpinning reason as to why that is. How much money would you want? How much money would I want? I mean, it depends on under what context. I mean, if you're saying like realistically right now, like if some billionaire walked in and said, "Hey, I want to make your problems go away. How much of a check should I write?" I would probably say 250 grand be enough to pay off all my debts and get a couple of new cars, and then we could just live off Social Security, and I'd be perfectly content. However, if I was going to like go on some great crusade to try and change the world, I'd say all the monies. Davy Crockett versus Jim Bowie. Well, let's just say there's no such thing as a Crockett knife. Jack Nicholson's Joker versus Heath Ledger's Joker versus, I assume, the other Jokers. Of the various live action Jokers, gosh, that's actually tougher than it looks. Because I know a lot of people would say, "Oh, Heath Ledger, because he's such a psycho and he's, a real killer." But Jack Nicholson actually racks up quite a body count in Batman. And, he kept a handgun that was able to knock the bat plane out of the air. So I think I would probably have to give it to Jack. Plus, I just like Jack Nicholson's Joker because even though Jack Nicholson physically is not a match for the Joker's normal tall and gangly character, he embodied that character. Where Heath Ledger's portrayal was something sinister and evil and terrible and disturbing, but it was not the Joker. And it's kind of funny, since we're talking about nerdy stuff right now. I saw Predator Badlands the other day, and then I watched Critical Drinker's review of it. I've read a couple other reviews on Critic List, including from Blaine, the guy that founded and runs Critic List. And I gotta say, all these naysayers, they just, I wonder how they would, I wonder how they felt about Heath Ledger as the Joker, because, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to that, is they all think he was genius. But the thing is that much of the complaining about this new movie, besides when they say, "Oh, it's just Disney-fied, Predator," which doesn't mean anything. Give some real arguments. But when they actually start talking about some things, they say that they didn't like the fact that it wasn't basically the masculinity on parade that the original Predator movie was. And don't get me wrong, I love the original Predator movie. Masculinity on parade and all. That's what it was. It didn't try to hide that fact. The whole, Dylan slapping their arms together just so they could flex for everybody. All this, everybody trying to one up each other as far as how macho they were, and then they get cut to pieces by something that is macho-ness personified, right? And it was a fun movie, and this movie is deeper than that. This movie is like, yeah, that's a part of the Predator culture. And so let's look at what a predator misfit would be like. And that, I think, makes Deck, the main character of this movie, much more interesting. If Deck's character was based on the Predator from the Schwarzenegger film, which really would be Deck's father in this movie, if that's the character that we got, then his character would have been a complete one note character and would have been really bland. Uh, and just basically, yeah, we must kill now. It would just be boring. The fact that they decided to take what if there was a predator runt, basically, and he wanted to survive. I thought that was a really interesting premise. So, all you people that think, oh, it's bad because it's not macho, whatever. Then you should hate Aliens, uh, because they changed the format from Alien. Aliens wasn't a horror movie. You know, um, you should hate any sequel that doesn't just rehash what the first one did. And that's the funny thing is that if this movie just rehashed what the first Predator did, they would have said, "Oh, it's just a cheap rehash." I'm sick of it. Money? How much have you got? Yeah, really, not that much. And why are you asking? Miss Moneypenny's in the house. Good to see you. In the Dracula novel, Stunlight didn't kill him; just weakened him, is all. Right. It just made he just couldn't use his powers during the day. But Dracula could not be killed unless he was staked through the heart. That was the only way to kill him. You put Count Olfa, but I assume you mean Count Olaf versus Dracula. That's an interesting one, considering Count Olaf is just he's literally a German ripoff of Dracula. But since he was invented for Nosferatu, the original silent film, and then reinvented in the remake of Nosferatu, if you're looking at classical lore, Count Olaf is going to have some serious problems because sunlight ain't going to hurt Dracula, but sunlight absolutely kills Count Olaf. As far as other weaknesses, we don't know. We haven't really seen. Count Olaf dies in his first outing because of the sun. And Jim Bowie versus Huge Glass. I don't, if there actually is a person named Hugh Glass, or you're just trying to get me to say that name crunched together too quickly, I don't know. But don't know who that is if there is such a person. A sequel to Predators would be nice. Did they ever make it off that planet? Yeah, I actually wanted a sequel to Predators. I thought Predators, it's kind of funny because you have Predator, which I thought was excellent. Then you had Predator 2 that I thought was crap. Then you had Predators that I thought was good. Then you had The Predator that I thought was crap. Then you had Alien versus Predator that I thought was okay. Then you had Alien versus Predator Requiem, which I thought was crap. Then you have Predator Killer of Killers, I thought was pretty good. And so this one I was expecting to be crap again, but I was pleasantly surprised. Charles Bronson versus Lee Van Cleef. Well, Lee wins because he has an Asian-ear sounding name. Tristan Saganoff, you have a good one. I'm going to run in just a minute as well, since everybody's just doing joke chats right now. Hugh Glass was a famous mountain man, survived a bear attack. Okay, never heard of him. This is a common theme of good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good. Yeah, it really is, ABJ. That was good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad in the Predator franchises. Every other movie was going to be good. So this one, now maybe you could say that Killer of Killers didn't count because it was a release. Well, and I forgot Prey too. I left Prey out of that because I thought Prey was pretty good. But Prey and Killer of Killers were both on streaming. So do they not count? I don't know. And I haven't seen The Revenant, so I don't know. Star Trek 2, 4, 6 are good. I would also, I'm sorry, I would argue Star Trek 3 Better than 4. I think of the original, and 1, not terrible, just kind of slow. I think that the only really bad movie of the original series franchise was Star Trek 5. I don't count Generations because it is painfully obvious that Generations was not written by anybody that knows jack about the original series. I'm sorry, Ronald D. Moore, I'm looking at you because you can sit there and say you were a fan of the original series all day long, but clearly you were not, based on the way you wrote Scotty in both Generations and Relics. Buster Keaton versus Jackie Chan. Well, I think Jackie's got the upper hand on that one. Motion picture is better than 4. I don't know if I would quite go that far, but motion picture is definitely underrated. Yes, it's slow paced, but it's like one of those Star Trek episodes where you're like, as opposed to one that you're like, yes. So it's definitely one to think about, but it's not an exciting movie. The best thing that the motion picture had going for it at the time was just the fact that, oh, they're getting the original cast back together. What do you know about the Coleman KJV of the Bible? Is it a good translation? The Coleman KJV? I've never heard of such a thing. But as far as the King James version of the Bible, because look, King James is a very specific translation, and the biggest problem with the King James is that much of it is it's based on the manuscript evidence that was available in the 16th century. And I'm not saying that it's a horrifically bad Bible. Like if you can understand the Old English style of the King James, all the basic concepts are there, and there's just a few little nitpicky things. For example, it says "Thou shalt not kill" instead of "Thou shalt not murder," stuff like that. But all that being said, almost every modern translation is superior as far as being accurate to the more ancient manuscripts that we found since then. And yes, he was a real person. Holman King James Version. Sorry about the typo. Holman King James. Holman doesn't do a King James version. I don't know what you're talking about. There's the Holman Standard and Holman Revised Standard, and the Holman Christian Standard Bible, and the Revised Holman Christian Standard Bible. And shoot, I don't have my Bibles behind me like I do when I'm upstairs, but that is my go-to. The Holman is one of the more recent translations. In fact, very recent. Let's see. And let's see. When was it? Holman? Okay. So Holman did a study Bible of the New King James. So it's not a different translation. It's just a New King James Bible, but with Holman study notes. So it's not a better translation. It's just a New King James with Holman's study guide. So I would say it'd be better to just get a Holman study Bible in the Holman translation. Yeah, the Revised Standard Version of the Holman Bible. Okay, so the original Holman Bible was published in 1962. The most recent version was, let's see, 2010. So that's pretty recent. I'm a big fan of 4, and I like the motion picture, but wasn't same awesome. Yeah, I would agree. Ever heard of a YouTuber called iDubbbz TV? No. I really like TNG, but I can't say they made even one good movie. Yeah, I mean, even though, look, I try to give things a fair shake. And yes, I'm very hard on TNG because I think it is inferior to classic Trek. That being said, I think that TNG became a great show after season three. But that being said, yeah, they did not make even a single good movie. Because the funny thing is, the best movie they made was also not very good Star Trek, and that would be Nemesis. Sorry to people that hate Nemesis, but reason I asked and went in my local Books a Million looking for large print Bible, and I didn't know about all these newer versions. Yeah. Well, like I said, if it says King James Version or New King James Version, it's not a new translation because those are very, very specific translations. In fact, people say, oh, it's a translation of a translation of a translation, which is generally not true. In fact, the newer the translation, the older the reference material that it utilizes to make that translation. However, the exception to that rule is kind of the New King James, because what the New King James is not a translation of newer manuscript evidence since the King James. No, it is simply a translation of the King James into modern English. So it is literally a translation of a translation. And so I would tend to recommend staying away from New King James and say that if you want a very, easy to read Bible, I would go with something like the NIV. And there's lots of great NIV study Bibles out there. And yes, you can get the NIV in large print. But, honestly, if print size is an issue, do what I do. I do most of my Bible study now online through Bible Gateway. And that's completely free. Yeah, it has banner ads, but it's completely free. And yeah, you can make the text as big as you want on your computer screen if you have a computer. And it has, not only does it have the Holman Revised and all that, and the NIV, it also has the King James. It even has Young's literal translation, which I find useful from time to time. I was published, I think, in the late 1800s, but it's a good word for word literal translation. And so there's hundreds of translations that are free and available on Bible Gateway. Multi-barrel musket versus black putter double barrel shotgun. I'm not a firearms expert, especially antiquated firearms, so don't know. I've never even heard of a multi-barrel musket. As far as black powder, I assume is what you meant, not putter, but a black powder double barrel shotgun. I don't even know what that would be. The 2009 Star Trek films are still 100 times better than Section 31. That I will agree. Section 31 is the new low of all of Trek. I couldn't even finish doing a review on it. It's so bad. So, yeah. Robert says, thanks, not a problem. Bible apps are great. I like YouVersion. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about YouVersion. I found Bible Gateway before YouVersion came out, so I've been kind of sticking with that for a long time. And I like the fact, and I'm sure YouVersion does it too. But like if you have Bible Gateway Premium, then you can also at a click bring up the Greek and Hebrew so that you can look at stuff in pretty much in depth. And of course, you can only do that in the NIV version, but still, it's pretty complete. And yeah, like I said, I haven't looked into YouVersion. I don't have a regular computer, just a smartphone. Well, Bible Gateway is available in the app form. I do know that. And I'm pretty sure YouVersion is as well. Do you think Starfleet Academy will be better than Section 31? Well, I would say this. Statistically, yes, probably. because Section 31 is now the worst Star Trek ever made. The statistical odds of them actually making something worse than that is very, very low. I'm not saying impossible, I'm saying low. However, am I expecting it to be, say, good? Like, okay, on the bad Trek, for me, and I know everybody's different, but for me personally, Trek that I will not watch unless I need to for some research or something like that. You have Section 31 at the very bottom. You have Star Trek Discovery. You have Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Picard. Everything else I would put in good Trek category. And I'm sorry for people that love Voyager. I just don't like that show. I think it's too inconsistent with the writing, and the premise is just pissed away, and it shouldn't have been. That being said, all the rest of Trek I can watch just to be entertained. So whether you're talking about TOS, which I do watch the most, the animated series, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, Lower Decks, Strange New Worlds, all of those I can watch and enjoy. But the rest, no. If I never ever watch Star Trek Picard again, I will not cry. Black Widow versus Batman the Animated Series Catwoman. Probably Black Widow because she's got more gadgets and she is an actual assassin. Catwoman, keep in mind, is a cat burglar, hence her name. She's not a killer. Black Widow is a trained killer. What if you lived in the 1820s and got into a fight? You had to pick between a knife, flintlock pistol. What would you choose? A knife or a flintlock pistol? That's tough because, on the one hand, a flintlock pistol has range. On the other hand, a flintlock pistol is one of the most unreliable weapons in history. So I'd probably take the knife, assuming I knew how to use one. If every other show sucks, this will have to be good. Yeah, I doubt that, though. I mean, if you want to go with the every other show theory, then this should probably be the best show in the history of Star Trek. Gunslinger versus a land pirate. What is a land pirate? I figured out when the Romulans were brainwashing LaForge, they were making him watch Section 31. I think you're probably right. Jem'Hadar versus a Borg. Well, that's not even a fair fight. Look, in a one-on-one, because run, you can't do a Borg, right? Because a Borg would simply stand there and look at the Jem'Hadar curiously if there's something they've never seen before, and then the Jem'Hadar would walk up and kill it. So, however, if you're saying the Jem'Hadar in their whole fleet versus the Borg, yeah, the Borg are going to curb stomp the Jem'Hadar and the rest of the Dominion as well. Without plot armor, Data versus Lore. Lore easily, because Data is not a naturally ruthless individual. Lore would have no problem just saying, "Oh, hey, brother, how you doing? It's so great to see you. By the way, I noticed that one terminal on your back is loose. Off button. Okay, I win." You know. A Jem'Hadar from versus a Hirogen from Voyager. Well, there's an interesting one because I know the easy bit money would go on Jem'Hadar because Jem'Hadar are in every way superior to the Hirogen. However, here's what would really go down: is when you drop the Jem'Hadar into the battle arena with the Hirogen. They would face each other off, and then the Herodin would charge up and throw a punch at the Jem'Hadar and break his hand on the Jem'Hadar's spiny chin. And the Jem'Hadar would start laughing and laugh so hard that he lost his breath and then lost track of time, ran out of Ketracel White, and died. Yeah. Kazon versus Jem'Hadar. You know, it's funny you should mention that. I was actually just thinking of that. So Kazon versus Jem'Hadar is a little different because, the Jem'Hadar don't normally eat food. They just do the Ketracel White thing. However, they would make an exception if they came in encounter with the Kazon because they would dip their head in boiling water and then eat their broccoli-like hair like broccoli. Someone with a minigun versus someone with a Tommy gun. Really? That's what you've got? A mini. Okay, you know what a minigun is, right? I mean, you've seen Arnold Schwarzenegger and all that. So a minigun is a modern. Basically, a minigun is what's on the front of an A10 Warthog today, right? Minigun is a very effective, high-speed rotating cannon. A Tommy gun is a machine gun from the 1920s that was extremely unreliable, but the one thing that it had going for it, and when I say unreliable, not that it was unreliable firing bullets. It was unreliable as far as aim. It was a spray and pray kind of weapon. It was like having a shotgun that only fired one pellet at a time. So there was no aiming precisely with a Tommy gun. Not and so besides the gross inaccuracy of the Tommy gun, the minigun just has got way more effective range and way more killing power. Pakled versus Lore Reloaded. Oh man, the entire universe would collapse under the pressure of that battle. Happy Remembrance Day / Veterans Day. Thank you. Bugs Bunny versus Roger Rabbit. I think Bugs Bunny wins that one hands down. Well, not happy, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Well, no, it's okay. Veterans Day, you can be happy. You just can't be happy on Memorial Day. Binar versus Borg. I think the Borg would find the Binar interesting if the Binar implants are more efficient than Borg implants. Otherwise, they just find them to be a primitive version of themselves. And Tarzan versus Shere Khan. I don't know. We'll go Tarzan. Why not? And Robert says, Happy Veterans Day. Thank you, Robert. I do appreciate it. Although, man, I served so long ago now that, if I was in a war, it would probably only be in history books. Let's see. That's probably the wife. Did you decide not to do a show? I am doing the show right now. Are you on the way home? Let's see. I wish we would see more of the Binar net. Orion versus Orion. That's an interesting question. Except that they're the same species. Just one has blue screen, one has blue skin, and one has green. So
Bible-based church life live stream. Get ready for daily church life live stream.
And still don't even know what's that talking about. MasterCard, blah blah blah. Just double checking. I'm gonna see. Go into the spyware. See are they moving yet? Wait for it to update. Yeah, she's moved. She's looks like they're at the grocery store. In their prime, LeBron James versus Michael Jordan. Look, I don't. I know there are a lot of fans of LeBron James out there, but if there was ever a basketball player to be called the GOAT, it should be Michael Jordan. He truly is the greatest. I've seen Michael Jordan play. There is he is beyond human. Burnham versus OG James Kirk. Well, if the Discovery writers are in charge, Burnham wins anything. However, in the real world, Kirk wins, obviously. Agent K versus Agent J. Oh, Agent K curb stomps Agent J. He's gonna be so busy talking about how awesome he is that Agent K just gonna pull out a little cricket and disintegrate him. Did you serve on a wooden sailing boat? No, sir. I was in the army. Jordan was effing awesome. He was. Look, when I saw Jordan play, I was living in Portland, Oregon, and this is when the Portland Trailblazers had the best starting five in the NBA. And I'm not saying that as an exaggeration. You can look them up when it was Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, Buck Williams, Kevin Duckworth, and Cliff Robinson. They were the absolute best starting five in the NBA. The only thing that could stop them was the Chicago Bulls. And to be more specific, it was Michael Jordan, not the rest of the team. Because the Trailblazers had no trouble controlling Scottie Pippen and all the rest. They just couldn't stop Jordan. The only way to stop Jordan was to be constantly double teaming him. And if you constantly double team Jordan, then everybody else was wide open. So it made it impossible because Jordan was that good. Because even though Portland was a better team, Jordan was that good. He single handedly won those rings. Real seventh face, what Trump did on the 250th anniversary of the United States Marines, he just needs to go. I don't know what he did this time, but you know what? I'm not gonna. He's the president of the United States. I will respect him as such, but yeah, do I support what he's doing? No. He was deadly with a musket. Oh, me? Oh, yeah, man. Could you imagine if Jordan had Shaq to go along with Pippen? If Jordan had players like Shaq on his team, the Bulls would have had too many rings for them to carry. I remember he still being double teamed every game and still average over 20. Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the Blazers would constantly have two on Jordan, and he would still score a respectable score. 25 is not a record-setting game by any stretch. Both Clyde Drexler has done way better than 25 in a game. Terry Porter's done way better than 25 in a game. In fact, the thing about the Trailblazers is that there were games where like every member of the starting five had over 20, but Jordan would typically get 50 points a game. It's just stupid how good he was. Yeah, basketball might be a team sport, but it might be the one where a single superstar can support an entire team. Yeah, Jordan definitely proved that. Pinkerton agent versus 19th century army man. I don't know what a Pinkerton agent is. I remember seeing some teams trying to triple team Jordan. Yeah, and the thing is, you could triple team Jordan and effectively shut him down, but triple teaming him meant that the rest of the court was 2-on-4. That's the problem with triple teaming. He had now the now president of Syria, which was the leader of Al Qaeda. He had or has had $10 million bounty in America put on him. He had the now president of Syria, which was a leader of Al Qaeda. He had or has a $10 million bounty America put on him. So what? He had him over for a presidential dinner or something. If so, yeah, that's kind of insulting. But, it's Trump. I mean, look, Robert, I know that some of you, I know there are some people that refuse to watch my channel now because I'm not supportive of Trump, and so be it. If politics means more to you than the content that I do, I certainly understand. That being said, I know that some of you, uh, are former Trump supporters that are just fed up with it. But to me, and I'm not going to say I told you so, but I'm going to just say that what did you expect? The man shows no respect for anybody or anything. So, there is literally nothing he could do that would surprise me at this point. He's pardoned so many people that honestly, and I'm not. The funny thing is, people say, "Well, Obama pardoned some guy that went back and committed another crime." Yeah, I'm sure. But Trump is pardoning people that did him favors, basically. He just pardoned all the people that were committing fraud during the election that he was saying the Democrats were trying to steal, right? All the fake electors thing. And I'm just glad that these people are still going to have to stand trial for state crimes, because he can't pardon someone for anything other than federal crimes. But it is what it is. I just saw weapons and really liked it. That's what Trump did. Trump should be kicked out of office. You know what? I think that part of the reason Trump has been so aggressive on the pardons in the last few weeks is that I think he smells the writing on the wall. I think that, Republicans are starting to turn on him, and when the midterms happen, chances are the Democrats are going to gain a lot of ground. And if they do, he'll be impeached. And this time he has a good chance of being convicted. Edgar Bug versus Obi-Wan. I would give that to Obi-Wan. Multi-Gunman saying, how's it going? I am doing great, Multi-Gunman. And Salty has pardoned me several times, except you haven't committed any crimes except the crime of putting a Canuck flag on my channel, which, that's forgivable. And, the crime of fighting with Alex Bogey, which is not a crime, and Alex getting all pissy about, like, when people would say mean things about him after he insulted you, uh, you know, whatever. I'm sorry. Put on your big boy pants. Is Trump really sending everyone $2,000 tariff rebate checks? No. No. I will be more than happy to eat my words because I would love to get that check. Believe me. However, yeah, no, not going to happen. Trump, that's just another thing, and that's the thing that the blind MAGA crowd is just like, oh, yeah, those checks are coming. Oh, things are going to get better. Oh, yeah, you know what? You just watch. Things are going to get so good. And he's writing all this stuff just to get stuff for himself and his billionaire friends. And meanwhile, people that he's screwing over are just like, oh, he's just doing it to set up. Things are going to be so good right around the corner. I don't even know how to fight that kind of blindness except to say, man, that's why I did 2 weeks about faith in the wrong place. Because I know that a lot of people that tune in on Sunday are still Trump heads. And I don't get it. I really don't get it. I do not agree with the fact that Biden was able to pardon his own son. Well, presidential pardon power is technically unlimited, except that he can only pardon federal crimes. So, and did I like that Biden pardoned his son? No, I thought it was underhanded and he shouldn't have done it. That being said, you know what? It's the problem is the power of the presidential pardon being abused, probably because we're not electing people of good character in office because we don't give a crap about character. I'm sorry, But people that want to point out how horrible Biden was for pardoning his son, Trump has pardoned parades of criminals that have helped him out. People that have been convicted of all sorts of crimes. Many of them confessed of these crimes, and oh well, it's all fake news when it comes to anybody who is a Trump supporter that committed a crime. Oh yeah, and I get it. There were some people that came in the White House peacefully, and some people that literally broke down the doors on the other side of the building. And I'm sorry, there's a difference. Anybody that was involved on the actual violent attempt to break into the Capitol building, and all the people that were violating the chambers of Congress, all the people that were chanting that they wanted to hang Mike Pence. I have no problem with every single one of them being tried and convicted of sedition, and you lock them away and they throw away the key, as far as I'm concerned. Those are people that were literally trying to overthrow the government, and I have no pity for them whatsoever. And Trump just pardoned them all because they're just such good American citizens, because they just love their country. Rogue One versus Solo, the movie. Rogue One easily. Blofeld versus Hannibal Lecter. Well, Blofeld has got a whole lot of resources that Hannibal doesn't. Hannibal is smarter than Blofeld, but come on, we're Blofeld's got a huge, multi-billion-dollar empire. Biden pardoned members of his own family and other people who weren't charged after Biden said he wouldn't do it, but that's whatever. And you know what? I'm not saying that Biden is a freaking saint. I'm not. But Biden isn't president anymore. So Biden is irrelevant. Trump is doing it now. Yes, Biden pardoning members of his own family was slimy. And so, fine. But that doesn't excuse Trump. And Thomas, don't get me wrong. By the way, good to see you. And this is another problem we have. We can't even have an intelligent discussion about this stuff. Why? Because the minute you talk about anybody doing something wrong, the supporters of that person are going to point out things that the other guy did. I don't care what the other guy did when I'm talking about this guy. If we were talking about Biden and somebody brought up what Trump did, I would say the exact same thing. But right now, Biden is an irrelevant person who probably doesn't even know his own name, which is sad and pathetic and just a fact. That being said, what Trump is doing right now is a disgrace. What Biden did was a disgrace, but Biden is not doing it anymore. Biden is no longer a threat to this country. It's getting better all the time. Politics has been wild the last 10 years. It sure has. It can't get much worse. Never say that. Trump sending all those $2,000 checks to himself. I don't know. I think, well, first of all, here's the problem with the $2,000 checks. You know why you're not going to get them? Because there is no Doge savings. There is no tariff savings. That's all pretend time. The government isn't making tons and tons of money that it didn't have before. Any savings that there is actually just things that did not get spent. It's not actual reduction in anything. And firing people and then rehiring them ends up costing more money. Don't even get me started about the Social Security thing. That was blatantly a lie. There were not 150-year-olds getting Social Security payments. There never were. But Trump was saying it like, even, and you know what? It's funny because even Elon had to back off of that one because he knew that when Trump started saying that, he was full of crap. That's probably one of the big reasons that they are no longer buddy-buddy. But but yeah, there is no savings for you to get a $2,000 check from. I mean, think about it. How much money? I guess here's my not showing my math skills here, but 2,000 uh, times 250 million people. That's a lot of zeros. Let's see. There's hundreds. There's thousands. Yeah, there would have to be $500 billion in savings to pay $2,000 to everybody. And by the way, that's lowballing the number of checks. But let's see. So yeah, not going to happen. And by the way, we currently have a deficit of 1.78 trillion. That means that just based on the standard numbers right now, we're spending almost $2 trillion more than what they're taking in taxes, which means that in order to give $2,000 in bonus checks to everybody, they would not only have to save half a trillion, but they would also have to make up the $2 trillion that we're in deficit every year. So they would have to trim three or 2.4 ish $1 trillion from a $7 trillion budget. Not going to happen. Much prefer monarchy. I do not. I just prefer that we actually elect people who are people of character first. But we don't care about character anymore. We care about the guy that can give one-liners and insult the other guy. Politics over character will be our downfall. I agree. It's still no pardon for Snowden yet. Look at him as a hero. Well, no pardon for Epstein either. Posthumous pardon. Saw a video from channel I Ask AI, which president was best to worst. In 2000, Obama was best, then Biden, Bush, and worst was Trump. I would not say Trump is the worst president ever, but he's definitely seems like he's aiming for that. Thanks to Snowden, we now know about the unwarranted mass government surveillance of everyone. We knew about that before Snowden. We just didn't want to acknowledge it. Jigsaw Killer versus James Bond. Oh, James Bond always wins. I am not an illegal alien. Michael, I'm not so sure. You are from Columbus, Ohio. Sonny the Cuckoo Bird, or Cocoa Bird, because he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, versus the Trix Rabbit. Well, I'm going to have to give that to Sonny from Cocoa Puffs, because Trix Rabbit, yeah, he loves his tricks, but the thing is that Sonny is insane. You put a knife in Sonny's hand and watch out. Where the Trix Rabbit just wants some cereal. Sonny goes flipping nuts. So yeah. Mercer in the house says hi. How you doing? Let's see here, and then Chip the Wolf versus Lucky from Lucky Charms. I don't even know who Chip the Wolf is. But Lucky is like Green Lantern with marshmallows. The only problem Lucky is that Lucky has is that he's not smart enough to actually use his powers properly. I like that Tommy Davidson from In Living Color. In his stand-up, he did this whole routine about how Lucky should have gone, oh, there's those kids again. I'm going to make a machine gun and blow the little mother effers away. And, that's because that's what Lucky should have done. And then, frosted Lucky Charms, I'll blow your butt to pieces. Lucky versus Captain Crunch. Lucky's powers could easily overcome Captain Crunch. Did you watch Weapons? I assume you mean Weapons. The movie? Yes. Thought it was good, but the ending was kind of lackluster. Count Chocula versus Honey Nut Cheerios B. Oh, Count Chocula for sure. He's a chocolate vampire. Come on. Running Man remake? Well, are you just finding out about that? Yeah, it premieres in a few days. Wife and I are going to go see it on Friday. So it's kind of funny. We got the Predator, the new Predator movie this last week, and then Running Man this coming week. So yeah. Tony the Tiger versus Toucan Sam. Oh, Tony the Tiger would come out of the bushes with some feathers in his mouth going, yeah, that's pretty good, but not great. Ronald McDonald versus the Burger King. Oh, the Burger King easily. I'm sorry. Have you seen those Burger King commercials? The Burger King looks like a straight up sociopath. You're just upset because you haven't been pardoned for giving Kuroga military secrets during Space Engineers days. Oh no, you see, I try not to talk about Kuroga much because of what their leader has shortly after surrendering to us, of course, ended up sadly passing on. But right now, Kurdistani aid workers are trying to help the people of Kuroga, who are just, they don't understand. They're waiting for someone to abuse them. Mer says, I like Tron Ares. I did too. I think actually it's sad because I was thinking about, when I have some time to try and do a video about this, the modern toxic fandom has destroyed cinema. I think it's official. Because we've had a bunch of really good movies come out this year, and every single time, people like Nerdrotic and Critical Drinker and all the rest of those yahoos are sitting there saying how horrible it is, and then they don't make any money. And so, it's just kind of sad because, I was rooting for Tron Ares. I enjoyed Tron Ares. It should have made a whole lot more money than it did. I really enjoyed Predator. I don't know what the receipts are on Predator, but I'm sure it's not that spectacular. People will be talking about it. And she's almost here, and she didn't text me. So I'm going to have to wrap it up here, guys. So let's see. Tony Tiger versus Sugar Bear. Sugar Bear is always high on weed, so Tony wins that one. Hamburglar versus Burger King. Again, Burger King is a sociopath. Have you reviewed Weapons with Mr. Know-It-All? I don't think we have. Kool-Aid Man versus Ronald McDonald. Oh, yeah. I think Kool-Aid Man would crush Ronald McDonald. Buster Keaton versus Krusty the Clown. Buster Keaton. Nuremberg was a good movie if you like historical films. Generally don't get too into historical films. Although Christie was a good biopic if you haven't seen it. Tony the Tiger versus Big Bad Wolf. Tony the Tiger is a tiger, so yeah, beats a wolf. Most of the Krogan military commanders fled to Argentina, like a certain World War II group after the end of their war. Yeah, we'll hunt them down. Jar Jar Trek is dead. You know what? I'm sorry, but I don't defame people like J.J. Abrams. His name is J.J., not Jar Jar. I understand you didn't like what he did, but that's not an excuse. Counterpoint is my favorite Voyager episode. Don't even know which one that is. And Josiah says, bye. So